Nursing students, time to talk. Welcome to the Real Talk School of Nursing podcast. I'm your host, Michael Smith. We have a great show coming up for you. Sponsoring this segment of the Real Talk School of Nursing podcast is NRSNG.com. As a first-year nursing student, I found NRSNG, I did my free trial, and I was hooked. Since then, the team has added tons of great content and continue to add more every week. NRSNG is a complete education platform for nurses and nursing students and includes video and audio courses, which is really great for both visual and auditory learners. They have cheat sheets, which has been great for referencing and recalling important information quickly and easily. There's a new phone app that so far I'm loving, by the way. There's a huge question bank, and there's books now. And when you're finally ready to prep for the NCLEX, NRSNG has a solid SimCLEX. In essence, NRSNG Academy is a complete solution for the nursing student and new nurse. They aren't overpriced, and unlike NCLEX Mastery, ATI, and Hearst, there's a lifetime membership option, which is very reasonably priced, and a decision that was really easy for me to make when I became a member. Rather than simply preparing students for a test, NRSNG provides a home base that members can come back to throughout their entire life as a nurse. Go to Real Talk School of Nursing Facebook page and our Twitter feed and click on the link to get your free trial.
You're listening to the Real Talk School of Nursing podcast with Michael.
All right. Still good?
Yeah, I'm all good. So I got it recording. So when I'll just kind of send you everything that we got.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You can hear me good and everything?
Oh yeah.
Sweet.
Do you do so for the GVO show, do you use also not just audio but also video?
We're going to. Right now we don't. One of my co-hosts, Carlos, he's got an upstairs room in his house that we're just kind of outfitting right now for a studio. And then we also have an office here at the gym that we're making. So we're getting our camera set up and our lighting set up and all that stuff. So eventually we're going to be doing like a YouTube live and then keep it archived on YouTube. So, but right now it's just audio.
Well, here, let's start off this way. I'll circle back onto that because I think that's actually like pretty awesome. All right. So welcome to the show. I'm your host, Michael Smith, and I've got Michael Vespa here on the cast. It looks like a casting couch or something. I don't know. Is this
well, I don't have a white wall behind me. So
no white wall behind you. So Michael Vespa is the owner at CrossFit Fargo.
I'm the head coach here.
Head coach.
Yep.
Don't want to mix those two things up.
Yeah.
So you probably don't recall, but we met at the 2016 regionals when at CrossFit regionals.
Okay.
And it was real short, but it was just one of those things where it's like, you know, everybody just had a chance to kind of talk and whatever else. And
Sure.
Well, anyway, it was I was glad that I was able to reach out to you.
Was that in Minneapolis or Ohio?
That was
That'd been Ohio.
It was right after Dan Bailey won California. In California. So it must have been Minneapolis.
Yeah, that would have been Minneapolis then because he was in Ohio again, I think, the next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me about your show. Tell me about what you've been doing, and just kind of tell me about Ruthless in Pursuit and the GVO show.
Sure. So like you said, I'm here in Fargo, North Dakota. So my wife and I have been here since February. I took a job here as the head coach, and then also under kind of like an operations director, and then also like a staff development director, which I'm sure we'll get into some of my background there. And then so I coach coaches here at the gym, and then I also design all the programs and the programming for all the few different programs that we offer here at the gym. And then I also work and coach a majority of our classes, and then kind of work with our owners and our core full-time team on just the growth of the business and everything. And then, so that's my quote unquote 9 to 5, and then yeah,
Your first
and
class starts at 5 a.m. though, I'm
yeah,
sure.
yeah, right. So every day is a little different, but yeah, then we run an online business called Ruthless in Pursuit. We are headed into, I think this will be I think this will be I- our fourth year. I think we're heading into in 2019. Yeah, that would be about right. So that Ruthless in Pursuit is a remote coaching and individual program design company. Um, and we work in a all kinds of different facets and niches of things where we work with athletes, sport specific athletes. We work with lifestyle management clients. We work with rehabilitative clients. So anywhere from, hey, I compete in this sport, I want to be better at this sport in a smart way, or I have been sitting on my couch for years and I want to do fitness, or I've been injured doing something else and I want to get back to what I do, or I sleep like shit. Sorry, can I swear on the show?
That's your show too.
Okay,
Go
sorry.
for it.
So I sleep like crap, eat like crap, and I just want to know how to manage my life better. Um, so when I started that company, I had one athlete. She was a track athlete. She was a triple jump athlete from Illinois, had randomly moved up to Duluth. She had a chronic back issues that just no matter what she did, she in the sport of fitness, there was just she basically had to live her life around not aggravating her back, and so started working with her, and then realized in about 2014 with that through my education and background that I was really good at it, and we worked her up to a health to where she went to a point where she could never do certain things to then she was going back into movements and exercises and fitness regimens that typically would have just put her out for weeks, and now she was doing them at full effort. And so that kind of spawned a lot of things, and then that company grew and grew and grew, and now we have myself and four other coaches that work for me kind of all remotely around the country, and then we have three coaches that are going through like an internship process, and our roster is currently about, I think right now we work with about 48 clients
Nice.
across the United States, and we have our first international client over in Spain. So that works remotely, and we work a lot with sport development, performance, lifestyle management, character development, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, and that's what I do. I'm a nerd for the human, improving and optimizing the human body.
So one of the things I really liked about the old podcast, the Ruthless in Pursuit podcast, was how your academic approach to a lot of things, and um, it was the show from the 24th of November. And remind me what it was. Not intentionality.
Let me see. I'm gonna pull it up on the app. I could give you the title of it right now. I believe that one. Well, there was one we talked about.
Circumstance.
Yeah, circumstance was, I think,
Circumstance.
the ones you're referring to. Yeah.
So one of the, I mean, I
Yeah.
really liked how you broke things down in such an academic manner.
Mm-hmm.
The nurses and you could probably ask Carlos as well, but basically everything you do has to have some kind of, you have to have some reference, some proof, some backup. It's not just your opinion. And if there's if there's one thing you approach with somebody, is like, okay, well, you say something, but what's your proof? What's the backing of this? So I know it's not, you just, you know throwing up, information, and stuff's coming right from your opinion box inside your head.
Right.
um so so we'll kind of get right into one of the reasons I really wanted to bring you on. So being a coach, I think, is I think one of your major functions is to help keep people going, help keep people motivated. And each semester through nursing school, especially, stands on its own for nursing students. And they're really highly grade dependent.
Mm-hmm.
So every point is literally critical. There have
Sure.
been a handful of students uh, through my experience in nursing school who've missed staying in my cohort for, by less than 2 points.
Sure.
So
Insane.
like literally you get down to the end of the semester and you get you need a 44 and get a 43 and a half or something like that. And you recycle for my program, you recycle to the next year. I recently heard about one nursing school that makes you start all the way over.
Oof.
So you could be in your third semester of, third of four semesters in nursing school, and they make you go all the way back to the beginning. So, but beyond that, when you suffer a setback, and it doesn't have to be just in nursing school or just in fitness or anything else like that, but, specific to nursing school, like if you have a poor test performance, the first test out of the gate, get below the passing standard or whatnot. What kinds of things, what kind of tools do people need to develop in order to make sure that they're not getting bogged down by that kind of,
Sure.
not a total defeat, but certainly a setback?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're asking, it's funny this time of year because as we move into the new year, everybody talks about the F 2018, 2019 is going to be the new me, but when we look at setbacks, and I guess I want to start by where a lot of my experience or knowledge comes from. The way that I view this is I am an expert at failing. And what I mean by that is that a lot of what I do or what I've done has been from failure, and what I've learned and where I've gotten to has been from that I've just messed up, or I just didn't, had a setback. And so I think the first thing to look at, and how I always try to phrase it for people is, because so when you're in a position, and my sister just graduated nursing school, and I remember her going through those moments where it's like, I literally have to get a 50, like you said, like a 55 out of 56, or I'm failing all this, you know what I mean? And it's like, wow, that's a lot of pressure. And it really comes down to fear, and the fear of a couple different things. And I think that once we, you could use the acronym, and I have used the acronym of Zig Ziglar has the acronym of fear: false evidence appearing real. And I think that fear relates to setbacks in a lot of ways, as that, okay, worst case scenario, let's take that one program we were talking about. Worst case scenario, you fail and you go back to the beginning of, you're in year 3 and you go back to day 1, year 1. Obviously, nobody wants to do that, and nobody wants to deal with it. That's worst case scenario. But now asking yourself what you've gained from that point of failure back to that would be, so if I asked you that question, so let's say you failed and you're in year 3 and you go back to year 1, what is the advantage that you now have back in year 1?
Well, certainly if you're asking me, I'm a big believer in managing fear with knowledge.
Yeah,
And again, it's one of the
exactly.
reasons I really appreciate how you break things down. Um, like my last podcast was, or one of my last podcasts was about people fear the national board, or it's called the NCLEX for
Yep.
nurses. Um, and it's this big monster that sits up on this hill that you're just, it's like you're underprepared for. You go in there and you don't know, and you do really, you feel like you go into it and just feeling crappy when you come out of it. And it's just one of those it's a big monster on a hill.
Right.
And I broke down how the test works, and, the pass numbers coming out of it. So I, and being prior service in the military, it was like you suffer defeats constantly. And
Mm-hmm.
so like being okay with how things go, the bigger consequence for failure, I think, is the inability to get back up. So if we're in that scenario where I'm going, okay, the consequence of me going back taking a huge step back in that worst case scenario where you're in third semester and you have to go back to the very beginning of the program. The advantage to that is that I understand what's coming. So
Right.
I have prior knowledge of what's coming. I I have some history. So I go, well, I didn't do well on that first test in that first semester. How did I do that? And how can I do better? And so
Exactly.
it's an opportunity for growth, I think, certainly.
Yeah.
The
And so,
downside certainly is the financial side of it.
well, right. And so, well, either way, so if we set the financial side, we set that apart. Well, basically, exactly what you just said is you take setbacks and you look at something like a situation like that, and it's not only necessarily obviously textbooks. Yes, you've gained the knowledge, you've gained the experience of maybe how to navigate, how that teacher taught, how that test was presented, how this project was needed. Like, you've gained that understanding, but even more what you're gaining through a setback, especially if you're going through the same situation. Take relationships for instance. Like, even though, granted, if we in a relationships end, typically we're not in a relationship again with that person, it's a new person. But either way, what you're taking from that is you're taking an understanding of how you deal with stress, or how you deal with what that situation now made you feel like, so that you basically almost have now you have almost a macro view of what you're going to go through, where when it's a new experience and we don't know what to expect and failure happens, there is no comparison really, unless so we don't have a larger view of what is to come, or what we're benefiting from. So by having a setback in a situation like that, or just a situation in general, is it offers you the ability to prioritize or categorize or put your fear into categories. So the way that we kind of break it down, in our company Ruthless in Pursuit, when we have these mindset talks with people, is we put fear into three categories. And we say fear because fear really translates to everything: a setback, a failure, excitement of something new. And we put it in three categories. The first category is past fear. So you look at past fear, and you can relate this to trauma, and the understanding of, okay, that has happened to me and I don't like the way it made me feel, so I either don't ever want it to happen again, or I'm super afraid that it's going to happen again because I don't want that feeling all over again. So there's past fear. How the pros of past fear is, okay, like I said before, right before that, is that I know how that feels and I'm never going to let me happen to that again. So like there's either the people that love winning or the people that despise losing. I myself despise losing, so I know for me, okay, I don't want to feel that way again. What do I need to do to ensure that that doesn't happen? So that's past fear. Then you have current fear. Current fear usually is, concurrent fear, current fear is usually how you could categorize that is, um, not necessarily, it's not anxiety, but it's like, it's the overwhelming stress in the moment. Okay, shit, this has to happen. What do I need to do? What if it's the what if? So a current fear is the what ifs. Like, if I make this decision now, will this take me to the left, or will it take me to the right? If you're a parent, it's like, what if I make this decision wrong now, and what if it affects my family or my kids later on? Or
If I
uh
make this decision now, my child will end up on the streets and
yeah,
you
right.
know.
Exactly. Or if it's, do I stay at the job I hate because I have a paycheck, or what if I left and pursued what I wanted to? It's like, would that, so current fear is the what if, and then there's future fear. Future fear is anxiety. It's the stress. It's, I don't know what's going to happen. The
Okay.
you know
So it's
well,
the future stress. You would break that down. You call it future stress, but like fear of the unknown.
yes, and that's what I was going to say, is you could break it down to maybe something you've never experienced before. So I think I want to go through the accelerated nursing program from LPN to RN. Like, that's a brutal program for,
Yep.
people. And it's like, okay, what if I can't handle that? What if I can't handle the load or keep up? It's like, or what if I
But
really need a new car?
we're programmed for that. I mean, fear of the unknown is something that's just, I mean, even as an adult, turn all the lights off in your house and if you haven't been into a room in a while, stick your arm into that room and just shut your arm and just let your imagination
Yeah,
roll
right.
with
Well,
what could
exactly.
be inside that room. And and you're in a safe environment.
Well, exactly, and that's the point, is like when you look at future fear. So the negative side of future fear is anxiety and stress, and maybe nine times, I shouldn't say nine times, but more likely than not, if you let future stress be a negative, it's probably going to stop you from doing something you were curious about. The
Okay.
other side of the positive side of future fear is what is it? It creates discipline and it creates creativity. And because creativity of the, well, I don't know how this is going to go, but we're going to figure it out. And then there's the discipline side of it, is that I don't know how this is going to go, so I'm going to make sure that I have these ducks in a row, so that when A happens, I can respond with B. When B happens, I can respond with C. And it's not to say that any right way or wrong way is the go-to, but when you can kind of break down setbacks or situations into those three categories of fear, then what it allows you to do is allows you to ask yourself, like, well, what is the negative of this setback for me? And maybe if you've been someone who's struggled with tests and passing things, that comes to a point where it's like, I just am afraid that I'm just going to continue to fail. So that's
Mhm.
the setback. Okay, that's what keeps me. If you look at the current version of it, it's like, well, what if I'm not smart enough for this? What if I'm not? What if I can't? What if I'm not cut out for this? What if I see blood for the first time in clinicals and I pass out? And it's like, well, there goes my dream of being a trauma nurse. It's those things. Or the future, it's like, well, what if I do this and then I hate it, or I'm not good at it, and then I just wasted all that time. So
Sure.
once you can start to categorize what it is that's making you either afraid of the setback or is making you just defeated about the setback, and look at that, and you can start to put those into boxes, so to speak, and then from that box you can go, okay, it's current fear. Okay, what about this current fear? Here's a list. Here's three things that I'm noticing about myself, that this is why I'm getting down on this myself for this setback, or this is why I feel like I can't achieve that. It's like once you can start to put that into perspective for yourself, then it allows you to manage it in a way that goes, okay, so this is what got me here. This is what got me to maybe falling short. Now going back forward at the same thing, now I know next time that I have this list of things to be aware of, or that I'm proactive of. And I think once we've noticed, especially with like a lot of our remote clients, once we notice that people start to do this for themselves, it's almost like it's this weird mind shift where when failure comes, instead of people being, texting me or messaging me and like, coach, I don't know, like maybe I shouldn't do this, maybe man, I'm not cut out for this, or maybe I don't know what to do. They go, okay, all right, so this happened, but here's my game plan, to do it
Sure.
again. And it's like, when you can see that for people,
All
or you
right.
can help people, or you can figure that out for yourself, you basically, now you've given yourself a whole new set of tools to just empower yourself to get through that setback.
Okay. So let's break this down in an example now. So it's the end of the semester. Um, and for myself, like many others, there's a significant amount of stress on whether or not you'll pass the semester. It almost seems intentional that there is something that's left out there in the ether that you have no control over.
Sure.
It's, in this case, like, um, the mechanics of, I think it's intentional that some of the mechanics of the grades are such that, an instructor can really derail you. And I have a paper I'm waiting to get back on, and it's like the big paper of the program.
I know I've seen
And
some of your Facebook statuses. You've been talking about it a little bit.
it's uh it's out there, and I've been working on this paper for I think I started it like 8 months ago. So it's
Jeez.
a
Okay.
big project, and yeah, there are little pieces along the way that get turned in or whatever, but
Sure.
you know feedback being feedback is like, well, what if I didn't change it in the way that they liked, or something like that. But the mechanics of
Right.
the grades on this, and I think not just for me in this example, but for a lot of students in a lot of programs, there's always something out there that they're waiting to hear back on. It's not I took a test, there's a finite number of questions with a single answer on each, and pretty much know how you did at the end,
Sure.
Paper is a little bit more subjective and such like that. And it's completely possible that the instructor hated the paper and I don't actually make it through.
Mm.
And that thought for most students, it's fear. So how would I categorize this? How would I categorize this, that situation into the three pillars of fear that you have?
Yeah, I think, when you're in a situation like that, like whether, you look at somebody who's writing, their thesis or there's something like that, where like you're saying that the dictation of whether it's good or bad isn't that you circled the right multiple choice. It's that it's really based on one person making the decision if they think you understand what it is you're actually talking about. So, the hard thing in a situation like that is that, like you were saying, there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer per se. It's all based almost, just systematically on just whether they think that you're smart or whether they even like you or like the way you write or something, which I've had to do some projects like that for what I do in my industry, and it's a nightmare. I mean, it's super stressful. So I would say that,
or even if they just disagree with your premise.
Exactly. If
I
they,
mean, it could be anything from, well, I think you should drink a protein shake 2 hours after a workout instead of immediately after, and,
Right.
and I hate your premise, so therefore you're out.
Exactly. So you run into the issue of, does my ideology match up with the person who's grading this, which is like, I mean, Dr. Jordan Peterson would probably tell you that that's chaos and that's damn near impossible, but it's like, so in that situation, what you have to look at is you have to, and I think where people can maybe get caught up in the gears of that is, I mean, especially with over a period of 8 months, that's a freaking long time. Like, that's a lot of work. And where you get caught in the gears of that is, I think, is kind of always going back and like re-chewing your information, and then it becomes this vicious cycle of questioning. But in the categories of fear, I think, obviously that starts with current fear because it's a work in progress. So it's always a current of, like I've had it where I had to write a big paper on Krebs cycle and how Krebs cycle works in performance and blah, 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 blah. And it's like every time I would get through it, and then I'd be maybe reading something totally offhanded, and it's like a thought comes to mind and I'm like, oh my gosh, that would have fit so much better into that. And so it's always the current fear of questioning, and there's really no right answer for that. But all you can really ask yourself in that current moment is that, were you happy with your effort? And I know that sounds so cliche, but it really comes down to the simplicity of that, is like, are you content, not even content, are you satisfied with the effort that if that was relayed back, if that paper was read to you or that situation was relayed back to you, would you feel that it was valuable to you? Would you understand it? Would you feel like you're gaining something from it? And so I think if you're always asking yourself in the current part of the fear of that, is that, what's the bigger picture? Is this paper am I really, really worried about pleasing that instructor, which obviously that's an issue, but the bigger thing is,
Of it.
it's a piece of it. But the bigger part of it is that if this were to get published to the masses or to the person it's potentially there to help or to educate, is it serving that purpose? I think that's how you can kind of start to categorize and maybe give yourself the opportunity to understand that, okay, yeah, maybe I need to work on, maybe I'm not good with words, or maybe I'm not good with formatting, or maybe I'm not good at research. Again, able to categorize yourself, is what I'm doing, would that on the flip side actually bring me value? And then there's the future fear of it, which is the grade, which is is this going to be acceptable or not? And I think where most people would be surprised, let's say in a situation where you hand that in and maybe you didn't get the grade you thought you were going to, or maybe whatever. I think a lot of people don't come back full circle to getting asking a question of why, and I don't mean why in like an antagonistic, like, why didn't you like my paper? Like, I think with a lot of people, I see this a lot with, especially in the military, you see this a lot, whether you're looking at a company level, platoon level, squad level, like a lot of the concerns that people have, they always get squandered between the two of them. But it's like, a lot of times if those certain questions could get run up the chain of command, 9 times out of 10, everybody's probably thinking the same thing you're thinking, and once it gets passed up to the leadership, then they see that, and then they can broadcast a bigger understanding. So I think sometimes in that situation, whether it's maybe beginning with a one-off situation of why do we need this, and what is your understanding of this, to the person who's basically the gatekeeper for you. And then the other question, that you can categorize or put to yourself is almost kind of conjoining with current fear is, again, is what I'm doing, is the point of this to bring that value? And if it's bringing that value, then there's going to be some piece of it that's able to afford it. So again, there's so many unknowables, and I think that's the thing that people get wrapped around too, is like you were saying, the fear of the unknown. It's called the fear of the unknown for a reason. So why do we always try to tell ourselves that we have it figured out, or that we need to have it figured out? You're not going to. And I think that's the other thing, is you're not going to know the right or wrong answer as long as you have done the work with the information that has been provided to you, and vetted the questions or vetted the situation. Then the only fear that you have is that you aren't doing yourself the due diligence of just putting the effort in. And I think that a lot of times with that future fear, where people start to get stressed, is internally they're actually very self-conscious and or upset at themselves for choosing to binge on Netflix for 2 hours and take away, and we've all been there. I'm guilty of that too.
I'm currently on a Mountain Men binge.
For me right now, it's I'm trying to think of what we just started. I'm catching up on Man in the High Castle on Amazon. But just that situation of it, I think sometimes with the future fear in something like that, is that it's we internally know that we're not satisfied with the effort we put in. So externally, how do we present that?
Sure.
We want to find an oppressor. We want to find the thing we think is oppressing our ability to do that. When 9 times out of 10, it's either us, or it's us blaming somebody because we don't know how to basically look ourselves in the mirror and say, well, bro, actually it was because you did this, and that. So I think in the end,
you went to the bar on Friday night instead of staying home.
Yeah, because you needed it, because you needed to de-stress because it was a tough week at school.
Yep.
I'm sorry, every week somebody could categorize every week as a tough week. That really doesn't matter. And I know that right now, some of the bigger issues, I shouldn't say issues, some of the bigger conversations I'm having with people is, so I had somebody the other day and talking about their training, and they're like, I just had a tough week, and my response was, so what? And they go, well, what do you mean, so what? I'm like, what? You telling me that you had a tough week? What? So what? Like, what? Explain to me the relevance. Well, I just had a hard week. And I'm like, okay, so what? Like, I'm not saying boo hoo you. I'm not saying that, because everybody's allowed to have that. We have to have that. That's the humanity of what allows us to have communication. Like when people say, I hate people that bitch. Well, really, people that bitch, they just want to be heard. So maybe you listen to them a little bit, because what's that? That's their reflection of them probably internally being dissatisfied with something. And so when I hear people say, oh, I had a tough week, or I don't want to adult this week, it's so what? It's like that thing, by saying that thing's not going to change. The only
we talked last week about how much better at like the how the age differences and how life circumstances. I'm a non-traditional student, so I'm a little bit older, and I've got like 22 and 23-year-old people in my class, and I just go, I'm better at adulting now. Like I can't imagine.
For sure.
I can't imagine being in nursing school and putting my how much better it is for me that I'm older.
Yeah.
In some ways. I mean,
Right.
there's a lot of circumstances where I'm like, oh, it's 9:30. I'm really tired. I wish I was 22 so I could stay up till 3:00 in the morning and then
no, exactly.
like off the pillow at 7.
I mean, totally. And that's the thing, is like, I have one of my brothers is 17, and he's in a different age, but he's going through a time in his life. He's just starting a modeling career and some different things. And one of the things that he's getting right now is he's getting other males his age who go to his school or he knows of, that are giving him a hard time for the career path that he's choosing. And I said, and it's really eating him up. And I said, okay, why is that eating you up? I don't know. I don't know why it's eating me up. And I go, and he goes, they just won't stop making these comments. And the same thing. I go, so what? And he goes, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, at the end of the day, what power are you giving that thing? What power are you giving the fear? How much power are you giving towards that fear? I said, what are you afraid of? Well, what if I go and do this and I'm not a good model, and in a year nobody wants to hire me and I have to go, then I have to find something else to do. I go, okay, so what? But it's that idea. It's that idea is that we give power, especially with future fear. We give so much power to other people's opinion of, take your, I'm sure you can relay the situation. At some point in your young adult life, from your early 20s to your mid 20s, your parents at probably one point or another had a piece of life advice they wanted to give you. And I'm sure we all hear it at some point in some age, and it sounds like old world advice. And we're like, yeah, what you're like, that was your generation, But then later on in life, you realize that, oh, maybe this wasn't the same situation, but it applied the same fucking way. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, I
That's
get
what they meant.
that's what they meant. And I think that's the problem with, with this situation, with like a paper like this, like asking yourself for the future fear, what is it internally that I'm not pleased with, that I'm externally broadcasting, whether that's this instructor sucks, they have a stupid high expectation, or there's not enough time, or I've got 3 kids and these younger kids don't get it. I gotta be a parent, be a student, and I gotta work a job. Like, okay, like, so what? There's always that. And again, it's not, I'm compassionate about it, and I don't mean it in so what is like I don't care. It's a so what, give me an answer. What are you gonna do about it? And a lot of times when you ask people that, they just I don't know. So I don't know.
I think in the nursing, not in the nursing profession, but I think there's a tendency for people who are in mentorship roles within nursing school. There's more hand holding,
Sure.
or at least that's how I interpret it. It's like, oh, and I think there's like, I want to find people with commonality. So like,
Sure.
You're going through the same thing. I think one of the reasons that this podcast was valuable for me, for example, with the previous host, Ben and Greg, is that, they were going through something and I could relate to that. I can be like, oh, okay. So I'm not the only person who's experienced this. And it put that experience into a box and be like, all right, I am not alone in space with this experience. Somebody else has dealt with this before. So
yeah, again,
okay,
you could categorize it and start to find, like you said, commonalities. And then through finding commonalities, I mean, basically what you're saying is tribalism. Like through tribalism, like we find commonalities with other people. And where tribalism really is you find commonalities in struggle, and you find commonalities. Like if you look at like, if we take like a more low income inner city neighborhood, a lot of them are so loyal to each other, and willing to fight for their neighbor and things like that, because what is it? They have a commonality of struggle. And by finding a commonality of struggle, what have we created without even understanding it? We've created a think tank. Oh, Michael, you're going through this shit too? What, like, dude, how'd you get through this? Well, this is what I did. Okay, well, one of those things might work for you. So again, when we look at, and I think, and I've had a lot of friends go through nursing school. I worked in the medical community in the military myself, and like you said, I think where a lot of the hand holding comes from is that also through tribalism. When we look at leadership and the idea of tribalism, is that a lot of times where the hand holding comes from is that leaders remember feeling that way, and they think sometimes in value that by hand holding they're doing someone a service. And this is a fine line to walk, because in compassion, with the dichotomy of leadership, like, you have to walk a hammer, you have to carry a hammer in one hand and a box of tissues in the other. That's leadership. And I'm sure you've experienced that in the military and things like that. But I think the same thing here is because the medical community is so important. We need capable, intelligent, innovative, and intuitive people to work, because
and emotionally strong people.
Exactly. And very emotionally strong people. But emotionally strong people are also they also have humanity, and they also have that fear as well. So I think sometimes where the issue is with the hand holding idea is that leaders think that they're doing the right thing and they're offering value, and they just don't know how to balance that. And that's where you get that situation. And like you're saying, you see that sometimes. And I think a lot of times that, for people who have had experience in the military, I mean, hand holding doesn't happen all too often. It takes catastrophic failures to get any kind of attention that's even remotely deemed as hand holding. The rest of it is do this thing, do it right. If you didn't do it right, come tell me what you screwed up, and I'm going to tell you what you screwed up. And then I want you to go do it again and figure out how to do it right. That's that. I mean, it's like you hear that and you're like, huh? You know what I mean? But
Again, faster this time.
yeah, right. There's that. The stupid, I shouldn't say the stupid, but what is it? Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. You hear that all the time. And it's like,
Yep.
and then you end up having that individual who's the low speed, high drag person. And you're like, well, we can't do anything smooth or fast because of this person. But yeah, so the hand holding is frustrating at times for people. And I think for you, like you were saying, with you being the older demographic in your class, you've been through a lot of these situations in different scenarios in your life where you've had to figure it out, so to speak, or the so what situation. So for you now have what I was talking about at the beginning, that macro view. Like you can see the 23-year-old and go, all right, I remember thinking that like this straw was going to break the camel's back.
Yeah, if I don't get a 99% on this thing, then my nursing career is over. I saw that a lot and it came out in part of the discussion in the last podcast is, I'm okay with an 85. I'm totally okay with an 85 because that puts me in the pass category. That puts me, I'm not missing knowledge by getting an 85%. I'm not going to fail a patient because I get an 85.
Right.
All of that other stuff is there. And to bring it back to the paper, I think like for this paper, I knew that I was done with it when I was doing that little nitpicky stuff.
Yep.
We're like, I'm putting a comma here to make it more clear, or to give the sentence a little more separation. And I'm changing this word from this to this. And then I would go back through it and I would literally change it back to the way it was to make it more clear and to give it more right. It was just like, okay, I'm not improving this anymore.
Right. And I think the way that people can look at that too is the reason you knew you were to that point is because, again, you had gotten to a point where you didn't think that you got to a point where you realized that your value that you needed to bring was there in the understanding. You weren't reading what you had wrote, and your beliefs or core values in it hadn't changed. Also, your knowledge of it hadn't changed. So I think when you can get to a certain point in the situation where it's like, okay, I've had 12 of my peers proofread this and criticize it. I've done it. I have other friends who are in the industry do it. I'm, like you said, I'm adding a semicolon, and I don't even know where a semicolon is supposed to go, but it looks smart. Like you said, once the structure of your belief and your understanding can't be shook, then you've probably nailed in that period of your life, in the situation with the paper, you've probably nailed where you need to be. That doesn't mean that in 10 years you're going to look back at the paper and go, oh my gosh, like what was I thinking? Because I do
that now. It's amazing the number of articles that I'm seeing that are related to the subject matter. I'm like, oh, I wish I would have put that idea in it too, or had that level, or had that additional proof. Because there's the papers on veteran suicide, a subject that I didn't really want to do at all, but my instructor kind of pushed me towards. But
that role casted.
It's a little bit. It was a little too personal, and there was a lot of experiences that came through the VA that it was really difficult to separate the academic paper from personal experience.
Sure.
And so it was just, and it's such a huge subject.
Right.
And
totally.
So, like a report just came out saying that, the VA had this like $7 million budget for veteran suicide, and they've spent $57,000.
Jesus Christ.
and like, and I'm reading the article because it's like it's an online article and it's from a reputable source, but and it's based on the report, but like, the it's like the title gives a little bit of it miscommunicates it,
Clickbait,
or it
unfortunately. Yeah, but I mean, even listening to hear you say that, like if you think like, you know,
that wouldn't have changed the premise of the paper. I mean,
and
it
that's
just
what
agreed with it.
exactly, that's what I'm saying, and I think that that's the other thing that people have to accept too is like, when I look back at, I look back at some of my old fitness journals and training journals from 2011, 2012, it's like, it's an atrocity, and then I look at it now, and instead of being upset with that, it's like, and I think what people can take, and especially in the nursing world, because I mean, I don't care who you are, most of the knowledge you're going to gain is going to be from that old crusty charge nurse that you work on rotation with. You know what I mean? Along with your academic knowledge, your
And
academic
by the way,
knowledge.
so hold on to my nursing listening audience. So in the military, an old crusty guy. That's not derogatory.
No, no, not at
so
all.
so
Yeah,
when when Michael says an old crusty nurse, it doesn't mean like someone who doesn't bathe or shower or care about personal hygiene, or it means they have a I don't even gosh I can't even break it
yeah.
down.
Think about it this way. When I say
they
old
they they
crusty,
they
I
have
mean
a layer of experience that
exactly.
surrounds
Yes,
them.
they're encased in a a generation of knowledge. They've got layers to them, so maybe I should say that layered charge nurse. Yeah, but basically what I mean is somebody who you go, oh wow, you've been doing this for 30 years, I should probably listen to anything and everything you say, good and bad. But to put it into perspective, it's just that experience. And I think that one thing that people can understand too in a situation like that with fear, especially fear of the unknown, is that let's break that word down. Unknown, just what we don't know yet. You know what I mean? So it's no is still in there. That's not, it doesn't mean fear of the uneducated or unimaginable
Or unknowable.
or
You
unknowable.
can find
Exactly.
out. You can find out.
Yes. So even if you just break that word down for yourself, it's just what you don't know yet. Because as soon as you get there, it's just like a little kid. They think that, well, it's like my daughter when she first was trying to learn how to swim. It's like we get to the 2 foot section in the pool and she'd be like, hold me. And I'd be like, dude, you can touch. And it's like she freaked out. But then as soon as I just kind of like plop her down, it's like she gets it. Oh, my feet are on solid ground and my head's above water. Okay. Like it's the same idea. That fear doesn't leave us. It just translates to more, dense and intellectual things as we get older. So I think the thing too, like you were saying, is that as you read back through a paper, it's like, oh, like I should have put that there. That would have flowed so well. That would have added value. Good. Now, as you move forward from this, know you have an additional piece to add.
So so let's do a quick review. So go through those patterns of fear, and then I think we've been recording for like almost an hour. So
Yeah, so think about it this way. So for any of your listeners that are listening that are going, let's say year 1 to year, whatever your program is, if you're in year 1 to year 3 of nursing, we could break this down the same. We've got 3 categories of fear. Past fear. Okay? It's past fear, meaning that something that's either a trauma or situation that's happened to you in the past, and the pros of that are that you don't ever want that to happen to you again, so you're not going to allow it. The negatives or the cons of that situation is that you're so afraid of that happening again that you won't grow from it. So you have to look at it both those ways. Current fear, the what ifs, if I go out to the left or I go to the right, what's going to happen? Well, the reality is you don't know. But a lot of times what's going to happen, the pros there is that you might have to have more exploration and you might gain more understanding from a situation that's new. The con or the negative to that is that if you don't make a decision, you're only going to stay in the same place, become either complacent, become sedentary, and just not grow or move on. And that only builds resentment and self-loathing. I don't care who you are, and change my mind. If you stay complacent, at some point in your life, you will either resent something, someone, or yourself, and then begin to loathe either that person, that situation, or yourself. Future fear, anxiety, the stress of the unknown, not knowing what is ahead. If we stay behind that fear, the negative side of that is that we never are going to learn more. We're never going to have a chance to learn more. We're never going to know what it is we actually need and or want, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, academically, all physically. And then the pros to that is that it drives discipline and it drives creativity. If we are managing the future fear, we are typically disciplined because we're going to go, okay, I got my paycheck was $200. My cell phone bill is $100. And then I got $100, but I got to eat and have gas. How do I prep for that for 2 weeks? Okay. That's being disciplined. That's saying I'm going to deal with what I have. Don't know how it's going to end up, but I'm going to do the best I can. And then creativity as well. Basically being able to say, okay, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to figure it out. And that's when, intelligence grows, emotional understanding grows, I want a 300-pound bench, but I'm at 155. All right. I got to work to get there. I need to find ways to get there. So those are those 3 categories. And again, I think if you can start to look at your situation or whatever it is, and first identify which of those is holding you back, and then or as part of that setback, like you said at the beginning, and then after you figure that out, give yourself a list of some things in that category that why am I fearful of this in this way. Once you can do that, you can literally take any situation or any setback and propel yourself forward in a greater, deeper way. And again, there's probably going to be some people out there that think that whatever, it's just what I'm talking about is fantasy and it's just something you hear from a motivational speaker. No, I'm telling you this because I have fallen on my face professionally and personally way more than I've been successful. And I don't mean that to be discouraging. I mean that exciting, because all that has ever allowed me to do is become that much more successful and that much more prepared, because I understand either, nope, don't want that to happen again. Okay, I'm just going to choose this. We'll see what happens. And then, okay, I chose that. Didn't go the way I wanted to go. Got to find a creative way to get back to that thing and choose another way. Or, okay, that went the way I wanted to. What do I need to be disciplined on to make this keep going? So
what you're saying is that defeat or setbacks is almost an opportunity for growth. It's very interesting.
Totally. I mean, you could even say, you could even ask yourself 2 things. Is this moment an opportunity or an obligation? Am I obligated to continue doing this thing if I hate it? No. Do I love doing this thing? Yes. Okay. This is an opportunity to learn how to do it better. Like, if anybody knows who Jocko Willink is, he has that phrase he uses, good. Didn't get the job we wanted. Good. Better, more time to build my resume. All those kind of things. Like, if you literally can look at it and just say opportunity, obligation, why am I afraid of this? This happened. Good. So what? Gonna deal with it. Gonna figure it out. And again, I don't say these things or mean these things in like a male militaristic way. I mean this like, have compassion for yourself, love yourself, and be okay with figuring that out. Give yourself time, give yourself patience, ask for help. It doesn't have to be a hard-nosed, hard charge thing, because that's not sustainable. You got to have highs and you got to have lows, people, and you got to be in the middle sometime, and just, ultimately just be okay with that, and just learn to help yourself find simple ways to navigate through it.
That was really beautiful.
Hard eyes. Yeah.
That's a great end. I think, wow, that's awesome. Mike, do you go by Mike or Michael, or does it not matter?
I go by a lot of things, but Michael's fine. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I really appreciate you taking some time and helping put this show together. I think it's probably one of the better conversations I've had about that kind of things, and really helps put things into perspective. So from me and my listening audience, I really appreciate it.
Well, dude, this was a blast. if anything, for our podcast, the GVO show, like people ask us all the time what the point is. And I say, I really don't have a point other than the fact that I just want to have discussions, like you were saying, with the people who are going through the same things. I want to have conversations with people who I either identify with and can share, or I want to have conversations with people who I know nothing about and I can learn something from. So dude, this was a blast, and I really appreciate this opportunity. And I really do hope that even just one person is able to just make their day a little bit more manageable by understanding this for themselves. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much, man. Literally, I ended the podcast or hung up the phone with Michael Vespa and got the alert on my phone that my paper grade came in. So the 8 months of work, the 8 months of sacrifice, the amazing amount of time that I put into this project, and all the worry was for naught. And my phone is still blowing up because my my group is texting back and forth, but I got a 97%. So all that worry was well prepared, did everything right, and was rewarded for it. So there we go. It's amazing. It was awesome chatting with you. I had a lot of fun today, and I'm really excited to keep this podcast rolling and help more students like me get through this fun we call nursing school. Coming in the next month, we'll be talking to a recent graduate and 75-question NCLEX RN test taker who will tell us how she stayed disciplined over 8 weeks while her cohort's test authorization was being delayed and she moved from one state to another. We'll talk to her about her study plan and strategies and what she looked at. We also have an interview with Chris Cruz from Chewing the Fat with Jeff Fisher, and the big announcement, John Hawes of NRS&G is recording with us in January. If you like the podcast, smash that subscribe button, and remember to leave us only 5-star reviews because that's the only ratings that count to get us noticed by more nursing students. So go to wherever you find downloads, subscribe, rate us, review us, write into the show, and please share the show with other nursing students. Remember, we're all in this together.
This Real Talk School of Nursing podcast is a BKD production, produced by BKD. Festive Holiday Light Show by BKD. Early morning post-shift energy brought to you by coffee, glorious coffee. And Sudden Celebrations post-recording brought to you by 97% on Michael's master's thesis.
The Real Talk School of Nursing podcast is a holy moly. I can't believe you're still listening to this podcast.